Calls for a public inquiry into allegations of corruption and sleaze against the government. It comes from the Liberal Democrats after the party secured an emergency debate on parliamentary standards after the Labour leader asked the Prime Minister for an apology to the nation.
Will you apologise for the way you dealt with the Owen Paterson and parliamentary standards affair last week?
So what we've got to make sure is that we take all this very, very seriously and that we get it right.
Also ahead, Obama in Glasgow. The former US president arrives to cheers at the Global Climate Change Conference. Take off. Thousands are flying to America as the country reopens its borders with the UK after nearly 2 years. And the Strictly effect, the star contestant who has inspired a surge in people learning sign language.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. Boris Johnson is facing calls for a public inquiry and demands for him to apologise over allegations of sleaze and corruption within his government. In the last hour, the Prime Minister, when asked if he would apologise, declined, instead saying standards within Parliament were being examined. They'll be discussed in an emergency debate later this afternoon, but without Boris Johnson himself. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has the latest.
As MPs prepared to debate the government's botched efforts to change the standard system, the Prime Minister was 303 miles away visiting Hexham General Hospital in Northumberland on what he said was a pre-planned visit. He had little to say about last week's debacle.
So will you apologise for the way you dealt with the Owen Paterson and parliamentary standards affair last week?
So what we've got to make sure is that we take all this very, very seriously and that we get it right. And there's a debate today. Unfortunately, I can't be there because I have a long-standing engagement up here.
To be clear, Prime Minister, you're not going to apologise for the way you acted last week?
Look, I think it's very important that we get this right, and we are going to make every effort to get it right, and we are going to hold MPs to account.
Back in Westminster, Labour demanded the Prime Minister come to Parliament to play his part in rebuilding trust in the standard system.
The fish rots from the head. And ultimately, the Prime Minister is responsible for the lowering of standards. He's the person who tried to dismantle the entire standard system last week to get one of his mates off the hook. It's disgraceful, it's corrupt. And the Prime Minister should come to the House of Commons and show not just the House of Commons, but show the country the respect that is deserved.
Here's how they got into this pickle. The Standards Committee, which oversees MPs' conduct, investigated £100,000 paid to Owen Paterson for consultancy work and recommended his suspension for what it called an egregious case of paid advocacy or lobbying. But the government used its majority to vote for a new system with a new right to appeal, which would retrospectively apply to Paterson. After a public outcry, that was withdrawn and Paterson tendered his resignation. A short time ago, as the Speaker arrived to begin business in the Commons, there was speculation that he might now get involved in redrafting the rules. What started as a government attempt to make the process easier on MPs in general, and Owen Paterson in particular, has resulted in greater pressure for Parliament to clean up Westminster.
Carl, so a new week begins, but no respite in sight for the Prime Minister over the growing number of allegations of corruption and of sleaze.
No, certainly not. And in the next hour or so, during that debate, opposition parties will do their best to make the government feel uncomfortable and embarrassed about what has happened, particularly last week, partly also in order to distance themselves from what went on and to try and make this a Conservative Party problem. It'd be interesting to see how many Conservatives actually turn up for that. Steve Barclay, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, has the unenviable task of answering for the government. Looking further ahead, though, there is talk of an appeals process for MPs going through this system, and that may well come to pass. But the government wants that. But there is also now talk about limiting the number of second jobs and type of second jobs that MPs can take, as well as their work here in Parliament. It's unlikely to be an outright ban. You know, some people are doctors and nurses and the like here, and they won't want to stop that. But there will be some sort of a clampdown in future, I imagine.
Carl Denham, thank you. President Obama was greeted with a rock star welcome at the big climate change summit in Glasgow this morning. There were whoops and cheers at the former president's arrival. He's spoken on a panel saying we need to unite to move forward. But his big speech to COP26 will be happening this lunchtime. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is there. What can we expect?
Well, essentially, Barack Obama is here to reaffirm to the world that America is committed to tackling climate change. It was, of course, President Obama during his tenure that the Paris Agreement was signed. He was one of the key architects and champions of that, committing nations of the world to getting their net zero by 2050 and also keeping temperature rises well below 2 degrees, ideally around 1.5 degrees. Then, of course, his successor, Donald Trump, came in, withdrew America from that. So despite the fact that President Biden recommitted America to the Paris Agreement on his first day in office, there is some scepticism here that America is fully committed to this. So Barack Obama is here to tell the world America is on board, and with his star presence give some wind in the sails to encourage the nations of the world to get there, to move quicker and go further.
This is not something that's 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road. This is now, and we have to act now to help with adaptation and resilience, which I know is a theme of COP26 today. As was true 5 years ago, we have not done enough.
Barack Obama being here is a reminder of the Paris Agreement. That was ultimately the destination. He's here to set out building the path to get there, because there's been so many loose commitments of how to reach those goals. He's saying that action has to start here, and it has to start now.
Peter Smith, thank you very much. Thank you. A rescue mission is underway in South Wales to save a man who has been trapped inside a cave for 2 days. The rescue team says the man fell while caving in the Brecon Beacons on Saturday. Dean Thomas Welsh is in the Brecon Beacons and sent us this update a short while ago.
Well, it's now approaching 48 hours since a man fell and seriously injured himself in the Ogof Ffynnon cave system in the Brecon National Park in South Wales. Since the alarm was raised, there has been a round-the-clock, day and night rescue operation with mountain and cave rescue teams from South Wales, but also teams across the UK from the Midlands and North Yorkshire. Now, the rescuers have made contact with the injured man, but the operation to bring him to the surface is complex and painstakingly slow.
It's the third longest cave in the country, and it's the deepest cave in the country, and it's formed on many different levels. And base level, we've got the active streamway, which can be quite dangerous in water and the rest of it, but it's got 3 entrances, and you can traverse the different entrances. So it depends on what part of the cave. Some part of the cave are just body-size crawling. Other parts of the cave are going things what we call boulder chokes, which are quite technical and sometimes can be quite loose.
Well, the cave system under my feet is one of the largest in the UK. This morning, we've witnessed teams of around 8 cave rescuers taking it in turns in shuttles to go underground and bring this man out inch by inch. Some of the team that are underground currently were also involved in a 2018 cave rescue of a young Thailand football team. Now, we understand that the injuries to the man are not thought to be life-threatening, but at the moment it's a waiting game to see when he will come to the surface.
Dean Thomas Welsh reporting there from the Brecon Beacons. Still to come, the US opens its border to double-jab travellers, and how one Strictly dancer is inspiring people to learn to sign. First, a man who's been killed by a shark on Australia's west coast has been described as a wonderful father. 57-year-old Paul Millichip, believed to be from the UK, was swimming near Perth on Saturday. His wife, who did not wish to be named, said he died doing what he enjoyed most, exercising. Dan Rivers has the story.
Oh, The fin of the 14-foot great white shark could still be seen in the aftermath of the attack. A dinghy helmed by local teenagers had been instrumental in raising the alarm, but it hadn't been spotted in time to save British man Paul Millerchip. The 57-year-old was taking his normal Saturday morning swim, his wife and children all watching on when he was attacked.
Rest in peace, Paul. He died what he enjoyed doing the most, which was exercising. Came out of the blue, but it did happen. We just have to deal with it.
The quick actions of local children in a boat helped to ensure no one else was killed.
I was about to go into the water and actually a lady stopped me and said, don't go in, there's been a shark sighting. And at this stage there were dinghies just off to my left, just down a bit, and then within a minute or so, obviously we didn't go in the water, these young boys in the dinghy came, screaming up along the beach, waving everyone out of the water.
This was the moment they faced down a shark which was bigger than the boat they were in, witnessing at close hand the gruesome attack.
When the dinghies were there trying to get the body into the boat, they obviously couldn't because the shark kept going at it.
Special mention to those young lads in the boat for what they did in what must have been an absolutely terrifying experience for them. So my heart goes out to them and I thank them for what they did.
A community left in shock at such a terrifying incident on a beach where so many swim each day. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
The chief executive of the NHS has urged anyone who has not yet had their COVID jab to get it. More than 89 million doses of the vaccine have been delivered, but 4.5 million people have yet to get their first one.
We are certainly experiencing now really significant pressures, not just from COVID, but from other demands on our services, and indeed the same for social care. So as we look into winter, I think we're very clear, this is going to be a difficult winter, and the things that we would encourage people to do is anything that they can do to protect themselves.
Well, let's get more from Chris Hossain, the Chief Executive of NHS Providers. Thank you for talking to us this lunchtime. What pressure is the NHS under right now across the country in comparison to the last 20 months of this pandemic?
Well, the NHS is under a huge amount of pressure at the moment, as are our colleagues in social care. So although the number of COVID cases is obviously a much lower than we have seen in previous peaks, so we're at about, I think, 7,000 to 8,000 people in hospital compared to 34,000 in the January peak. But it's the other work that we're trying to do at the same time, which is causing us real pressure. So we're trying to get through those elective backlogs, those care backlogs as quickly as possible. We had the busiest September on record in terms of urgent and emergency care. We had in August the highest number of inquiries about mental health services, and we know that in particular our ambulance colleagues are under real pressure. So wherever you look, and this is before we've got into winter, the NHS is under real pressure, which is why, Nina, it's really important that we listen to that message of please go and get your booster jab, get your flu jab, and please be careful when you mix with other people who you don't ordinarily mix. Think about face masks, think about ensuring that if you're in a room with people that you ventilate the room.
Have we got any evidence, any reasons behind why people who did go and get their first jab and then have their second jab, so many of them are deciding or haven't yet had their booster jab?
Well, we need to remember two things. The first is the fact that actually you're only eligible for your jab after 6 months, though we've actually now ensured that you can book after your 5th month so that you book a month ahead. But also, I do think that some of this is around people think that perhaps, the game might be all over, but actually it absolutely isn't. And it was very striking for us that when the Prime Minister, when the Health Secretary did a Downing Street press conference about 2 or 3 weeks ago, haven't had very many of those recently. Interestingly, in the 3 days after that press conference, we had triple the number of people kind of coming forward. So I suspect it's probably linked to people's perceptions of what the risk is. So I'm here to say very clearly, the NHS knows that we need to try and cope as much as possible without reaching for those draconian lockdowns. But you can help us ensure that we don't have those draconian lockdowns by going to get your booster jab, get your flu jab, and just be really careful when you interact with other people.
What about the situation in the NHS itself in terms of NHS workers? This debate is still out there about whether they should be told they have to get COVID jabs, like in the care sector. What are your concerns about if that became government policy? Because the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, called for that this weekend.
Well, so I think we're very clear. There are two risks to manage here. There's the obvious risk, which effectively is that if you've got COVID, and don't forget, you can't always tell you've got, because it's asymptomatic, you can't always tell you've got it, then clearly there's a risk of NHS staff infecting patients, visitors and other NHS staff. So I recognise the logic as to why you would want to go for mandatory vaccination. But there are numbers of NHS staff that coming down, significantly haven't got vaccinated. And if we set a deadline for that mandatory vaccination that's right in the middle of winter, our busiest period, we will ensure that we, lose lots of people. So there's two risks to manage here: the risk of the cross-infection, but also the risk of losing large numbers of staff when we simply can't afford to.
All right, Chris Hossain, thank you very much for that analysis and your thoughts on the situation today. Thank you. America has reopened its borders this morning to a host of nations, including the UK. For the first time in nearly 2 years, transatlantic flights resumed. Rival airlines, British Airways and Virgin Atlantic, marked the moment with a synchronised departure from Heathrow. It is a day of celebration for the aviation industry and for anyone wanting to head to the States. Chloe Keedy has the details of who can travel there and what they need to do.
At 8:51 a.m. on parallel runways at Heathrow Airport, a rare moment of synchronicity between two of aviation's biggest rivals. For British Airways and Virgin Atlantic, this stunt was a way of celebrating the reopening of America's borders. As they took off for New York, more passengers were arriving at Terminal 3, all with very good reasons to feel excited.
My sister lives there because of the pandemic and stuff, so really excited to go there today.
We're going to Arizona to meet my father-in-law for the first time. I'm a bit apprehensive, a bit nervous, but excited.
We've been waiting for a big family holiday for about 2 years. We're trying to get it organised now, so yeah, just really excited because it's been cancelled and postponed so many times. So yeah, we're buzzing.
2021, we are open! And America is buzzing to see them too. In New York, they're welcoming back foreign tourists for the first time in 600 days. But for anyone wanting to travel, there are a few rules. From today, fully vaccinated foreign travellers will be allowed entry to the US. You must have proof of a vaccine approved by the World Health Organization, which includes Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Moderna. And you'll also need proof of a negative test taken no more than 3 days before your flight leaves. Children under 18 don't need to be fully vaccinated, but those over the age of 2 must show proof of a negative test taken no more than 24 hours before departure. The paperwork might put some people off, but the aviation industry today hailed the resumption of transatlantic travel as a major milestone.
The UK and the US corridor is one of the most important corridors in the world in terms of aviation. $270 billion of trade between these two countries. Families and loved ones, of course, need to be reunited. So a very big day.
He will be keeping his fingers crossed that today's takeoff serves as a metaphor for the industry's direction of travel. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
5 football clubs will take part in what's being called a safe standing trial from the 1st of January. Manchester United, Manchester City, Tottenham, Chelsea and Cardiff are the clubs whose applications have been approved. It marks the end of a ban on standing on the terraces, which has been in place for more than 25 years. Rose Ayling-Ellis has smashed her way through 7 weeks of Strictly Come Dancing so far, but it's not just on our screens that the actor is having an impact. The EastEnders star is the show's first deaf contestant, and her participation has seen a 3,000% increase in the number of people signing up to learn British Sign Language. I'm joined now by Terry Devine from the Royal National Institute for Deaf People. Thank you for chatting to me today. You can't have been expecting such an incredible response. What is your reaction to these figures? 3,000% surge.
It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, we can't confirm the 3,000. We don't have definite figures on how many it is, but we do know that Signature have announced that there's been a 28,000 increase since last month in the figures. So they've got 83,000 people interested in learning BSL. They've actually had hundreds of people signing up to do more courses. So it's absolutely fantastic, the profile it's raised.
OK, so you sign up. What are your top tips for learning sign language? Is it a language that you can at least try to teach yourself?
Absolutely. You can do things online. So Signature have a course, a basic learner's course that they can do, which is $9.99 as far as I know. And you can go on and do that online. And it would be absolutely fantastic if everybody could learn a bit of basic BSL, because deaf people are so isolated in the community when nobody can actually speak with them, and actually having those basic signs can make a huge difference to them. You know, whether it's just being able to say, hello, can I help you? You know, what can I do to support you?
Yeah, especially in a world where we're still wearing masks in lots of situations and scenarios. In general, how can people feel better equipped to communicate effectively with people that they do come into contact with who are deaf? And as you say, often in that situation where it's just a stranger and you're just wanting to help somebody out, or vice versa.
Yeah, so you can go on our website and we have free communications tips, which you can use with anyone. There's finger spelling cards on there as well that you can download. And basic finger spelling, if you can do that, you can get by in communication without knowing the actual signs themselves.
Can you say goodbye to us using sign language then, so we get a flavour of it, of what we need to all learn?
I certainly can. So thank you for your time and goodbye.
Goodbye. Terry Devine, thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, a primary school teacher who had to have all of her limbs amputated when she contracted sepsis has gone back to work in the classroom. Kath Tregenna was admitted to hospital after a 111 call 2 years ago. She suffered countless cardiac arrests and had to have all of her arms and legs removed. It has been a long recovery, but thanks to new bionic arms paid for through fundraising by her school, she's finally able to teach again.
From the moment I arrive at school, I'm using the arms to do all sorts of tasks. Going out wearing the hero arms actually makes me feel very, very confident. They just enable me to carry out a range of classroom activities which I wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
Amazing story. That's it this lunchtime. Mary will be here with the ITV Evening News at 6:30. From everyone here for now, bye-bye.